I'm User-Friendly's assistant, and in this video I wanted to talk about sort of like a rhythmic part of glitch music stuff, experimental music, whatever. So this is the main track here. It's very simple. It's essentially just a couple MIDI notes. They're triggering this arpeggiator, which is ratcheting into these two expression controls, and they're just randomly modulating stuff on the arpeggiator on the operator as well as the arpeggiator. The only other weird thing is this expression control is being sent back to this first arpeggiator to modulate this rate. You'll notice this arpeggiator here, this is the one that's actually triggering the operator. That's set to milliseconds. So it's not synced with the clock in any way. And, by extension, not synced with the beat. The modulation, that is synced. So if I switch this over, and then turn it back on, it doesn't really sound any different. But if you turn the drum beat on, that's the modulation synced, and this is with the modulation unsynced. It is subtle, but you can hear that this one it's a little bit more tied together. So you're getting the sort of wonkiness that, having this arpeggiator that's triggering the operator, not be tied to the clock. But since the modulation is happening in time, it sort of adds a little bit of cohesiveness. And that's kind of like the main idea here, is just taking some sort of crazy glitchy sound, but then just kind of doing something to sort of, even if it's subtle, just like tie it to something so that way you kind of have something to hold on to, if that makes sense. Another thing you could do would just be to add a compressor and sidechain it to the beat. And then simpler still would be to just do something like an auto pan, turn the phase off, and now it's basically just a chopper. So you're just kind of, again, carving away at stuff, but it's happening, there's some relationship between the beat and when that craziness is happening, but you're still allowing something outside of the clock or the BPM to kind of come through. Another thing you can do is essentially just use effects as percussion. So I'm going to turn this off, and in place, I'm just going to put an operator set to white noise. So that sounds like this. And then the only other thing I'll do is maybe just from there, I'm going to add a roar. Put it in multiband, and we'll leave this one as a low pass, put this one at a band pass, and this one is a high pass. And then where the kick should be is where we'll turn the drive up for the roar. So now it'll kind of, it doesn't actually have to sound like, I'm not trying to recreate a kick-hat snare. Like, I would rather just use a kick-hat snare. This is more just like to demonstrate the idea behind it. And then the highs will obviously, or the hi-hats will turn the highs up. So tied with the drum beat. Now again, like, you're not actually trying to make it sound like kick-hat snare. It's just some, like, you're just trying to create like relationships between stuff. Where the snare happens, I'm going to turn this reverb on. And then maybe where the kick happens, I'll turn a delay on. It would probably work a little bit better if you kind of did this as like effect sends. That way it would sort of tail out over time, but it doesn't matter. The thing that could be interesting about just literally turning the dry wet on and off like this is now you can kind of modulate stuff a little bit more randomly, and it'll sort of quantize itself, if that makes sense. Like, it won't just go all over the place. So with just white noise, it's really apparent what's happening and you can hear it. I'm going to switch this white noise out for this crazy glitch thing. And you probably won't really hear what's happening as much anymore, but it is there. So yeah, that's the basic idea for this video. Just kind of something interesting to try. And then also thinking about effects like percussion in a weird way, because you can get even more interesting results if, rather than just like turning the dry wet on and off, you set up a MIDI track with actual envelopes on it and trigger this stuff, because then you can sort of use the envelope to sort of shape the effect a little bit. So rather than the reverb just turning on and turning off in a square, you know, there's a nice envelope to where you can shape it to be like a snare.